So in this video, I want to talk about my experience using the Garmin watches, or the latest Garmin watches. Of course, we have the Garmin Epix Gen 2 Pro 51mm here over on the left, and then the Garmin Fenix 7X Pro on the right here. So of course we have the AMOLED versus the transflective membrane pixel type display. And throughout the 4 months I have owned them, I have pretty much worn them on my wrist equally amount of time, so around 2 months each. And you can kind of see my wrist here from taking it off, filming this video. This is kind of what it looks like. And actually, I had quite a lot of rash after wearing the 7X on my wrist. I'm not really sure if it's because of the bare titanium, because it's also bare titanium here on the back. And it did rash out a little bit here on my wrist, so I had to wear it on my right wrist for a few weeks. I've never had that issue with any other Garmin watch. You can see I do kind of get a little bit red and so on, right where the heart rate sensor is. And of course, I wear the watch 24/7 when I go to shower and when I wash my hands. The watch band, of course, will also get wet there, and of course, working out and so on. I never take it off other than for charging or for updating, connecting it to my computer. That's the only time when I actually take it off. But anyways, first off, I kind of want to get into the overall condition of these watches after, like I said, 2 months of usage for each of them, or wearing them for around 2 months. So of course, we do have the bare titanium versus the anodized titanium. So let's just take a look at the bezel here. Because this is bare titanium, it does scratch a little bit easier. I don't know if you can actually see this, but there is quite a few smaller scratches on the bezel. It doesn't really bother me. It kind of gives it a little bit of patina, or resembles like more of a regular watch where you kind of get these micro scratches and so on. But overall, actually, it's held up a little bit better than I would have anticipated. Like I said, I wear my watch no matter what. So when I fix my car or work on my car, I also have my watch on. Only really on rare occasions I take it off when I need to reach into something where I cannot have the watch on. I take it off, but other than that, of course, I have it on my wrist. And the Epix definitely held up quite well as well. I don't really see any major scratches or dents or anything like that at all, or dings on the bezel at all. Maybe some small ones down here. Nah, that actually just wiped off. So no, really held up quite well, both of them. But if I had to pick a favorite, I would probably just go with the gray one or the anodized one. I think that still looks a little bit better. But actually the silver one has grown on me a little bit. But if Garmin had a black version of the 7X, I would have bought that. And then the gray of the Epix Pro. Not really total fan of that white and silver, but it's definitely very refreshing to see something new on my wrist, because I've just had those black or gray Garmin watches for so many years now that I kind of like just having something new on my wrist, and it's actually grown on me quite a bit. So yeah, I like the silver one. Not my most favorite color, but it's definitely quite nice. And of course, all the buttons still works just fine on both of them. And that is excellent, because you never really know with Garmin watches, especially like the smaller watches for some reason, tend to just have buttons that can sometimes feel a little bit mushy. So you don't get really the satisfying click when you click on the button, and sometimes you can have a feeling of a double click when you just press the button, that it clicks 2 times, or maybe it's not really that responsive and so on. I've not had any issues as of yet with the buttons. They still feel very responsive and very clicky, so that's nice. And of course, the same thing on the other side here, still feels very satisfying and very clicky to actually click on them. So both of the devices, buttons are still feeling very nice, and I've had no issues with those as of yet. But it's of course still very early on. I've not really been out running that much, really, because I've had some health issues and I have issues with my asthma and so on. So running is not really the best for me at the moment. So I've just been focusing on hiking, walking, and strength training. So my VO2 max is still not the greatest. I want to improve that maybe when getting into the autumn and winter time here, because like my asthma is always a lot better when it's a little bit colder out. But anyways, in terms of the screens of these two devices, I'm still so indecisive. I like both of them. I wouldn't say equally as much. Of course, like the Epix Gen 2 better, because it looks so much nicer when you're using it actively. But I don't like that when I use it as a watch, because it will get into a dim state, and also it will turn off when I get into sleep mode. Versus the 7X, of course, always on. And with the new backlighting, that is actually very usable when you're outside as well. Maybe not in direct sunlight, but when you're inside a shade, tree covers and so on, just wanting to track on your map or look at the map. It can sometimes be a little bit difficult, especially if you have the Sapphire version, which of course both of these are. The screen is less transparent, and you also have more glare. So it can be a little bit hard at times to actually see, for instance, on your mapping where you are and so on, if you're inside a tree cover or if you're inside in darker environments. The new backlighting is just a game changer on the 7X. Now, no matter what lighting conditions, you can get great looking maps and great contrast, and just the screen is so much easier to read. Beforehand, with previous watches with MIP tight displays, the backlight was just okay enough to actually see what's on the screen, but you lose a lot of contrast, and also there was a lot of differences between watches. You never really knew if you got one with the good backlight with higher contrasty, or if you got one with like bad backlighting that had lower contrast. But this time around, they really focused on the backlighting, so not only is it brighter, it is much more contrasty, so you can see stuff on the screen much more detailed, and it is actually very usable now. So I would say out of these two watches, I probably prefer the 7X during summertime because it does have the transflective screen. Of course, it lights up when you actually get some light on the watch, like right now with my studio light here. You can see it lights up quite nicely, easy to read. Also at nighttime, easy to read enough, and of course you can just tap the screen if you want to turn it on, or tap the light button here up in the top corner there, and you will have backlighting. But the fact that it is truly always on is just so nice for me personally. I really miss that when I'm on my Epix watch, because also if you're just in a dark environment and the watch actually thinks that you have the watch inside a sleeve, then the screen will turn off, and sometimes I just find it off even though I am in a darker environment and don't have it inside a sleeve or something like that. So it's not really all that consistent. Or maybe I go to the toilet at night. Sometimes when I just, wash my hands after going to the toilet, I'll just peek at the watch and see what time it is. This one will be off because it's in sleep mode. I have to press the screen. Sometimes I actually need to press it a few times because I don't hit it correctly the first time. So it's just an extra step I have to go through in some instances to actually see the screen. And I definitely do prefer having the always on screen. I did try to have it raised to wake, but that's just kind of defeat the purpose of having a watch on 24/7 in my opinion, because you can't really peek at your watch at the same time. And if you're having a conversation with somebody and you're kind of flipping your wrist to look at your watch, you can't really do that without the person knowing that you're actually looking at your watch, and then you're kind of looking like you want to be somewhere else, being very rude. So yeah, I like the nice looking OLED screen, but I really like the function of the transflective MIP type displays, and it's not really that bad nowadays. It's like I said, with the new backlighting, it's definitely a game changer for lower lighting environments. And the new heart rate sensor, of course, now we do have EKG, or at least if you live in Europe, you can activate EKG. I actually tried to do so. You can kind of spook it or spoof it to think that you are in US to activate it. I tried to use a VPN and then use a GPS application on my phone to make it think that I was in New York or somewhere in the US or in the States. I never really got the setup menu inside Garmin Connect to actually set up EKG, so I cannot really test that. But the heart rate sensitivity or the heart rate accuracy, it seemed to be better than the previous generations, but in my opinion, it still is lagging a little bit when it comes to strength training, because that's what I'm focusing on primarily right now. So that's, of course, where I have most of my experience. And I just find, unless you are moving the watch up on your wrist, higher on your wrist, I do have it pretty high on my wrist, you can see right here, but just move it up a little bit higher and then tighten it in even tighter, then I think it will be pretty okay. But just wearing it on your wrist like I do when I run and so on, I feel like it still is a little bit off when it comes to strength training. Like I said, I haven't really been doing that much running lately, but I have been out a few times, and I feel like it's a little bit more accurate there, and it's a little bit faster at detecting the different stages of your heart rate. If I was more serious about my running, I would still probably use a chest strap, but just for everyday runs, casual runs, slow runs, I feel like this is definitely fine enough. But maybe for those interval runs, I think maybe it's still better to get a chest strap, especially with the bigger watches. It's like I said, better, but the bigger the watch you have, the more movement it will also have on your wrist, especially if you run fast. And the more movement, the less accurate these sensors will actually be. So it's definitely a step in the right direction, but it is of course still not comparable with a chest strap. It's enough for me to just get started, but like I said, if I get back into seriously running again, I would also be using a chest strap just to get those small extra accuracy in my heart rating data, because that is very important. Once you get into a certain level, you only really see those small incremental updates or incremental changes and so on. And we still, of course, have the exact same charging / data plug. I really like the fast start charging. That is definitely also a nice new added bonus. I'm not really sure I would like it to charge faster because it is a very small battery in here, and will also just wear the battery a little bit faster. But I'm personally one of those guys who kind of forgets to charge my watch, especially when I am wearing my Fenix 7X. Because of the long battery life, I kind of don't really get into a steady charging cycle. So it's nice that I can just put on a charger and I know it will charge up much quicker than previous watches. It's very often something I do at last minute, charging my watches, so definitely nice that it is now faster charging. And in terms of watch straps, I still use these Yo-side watch straps, sporty watch straps. I still feel like they are the best watch straps for the Garmin watch. I can't really understand why Garmin haven't made something similar. I know they have like the Ultra Fit band, but this is, I feel like, much better because you only really have one loop to tighten onto your wrist. The other one is on the inside here, so it's permanently attached in the other end there, and then you have only the one point here where you actually need to adjust the band. So definitely, in my opinion, the best watch strap you can get for a Garmin watch. I really like this gray and yellow one for the 7X. I feel like it kind of suits the whole watch aesthetics there, and I really like the green one when I on my gray Epix watch. I feel like, again, those two really fit nicely together there. But other than that, it is really hard to fold these watches. Other than, of course, they are relatively expensive. It is quite a big pill to swallow, especially if you buy like 2 of these watches. I already have like a Fenix 7X that I did sell, so of course I could get like 50% of my investment back. But still, it is quite an investment. But I really like all the data they are collecting. I have issues sleeping, and I also have issues stressing myself a little bit too much. So it's nice to be able to actually have some kind of reference. See, okay, maybe I'm stretching myself a little bit too much right now. I need to relax a little bit. For instance, my body battery today was only like 50%. I did get okay sleep, but my HRV status is a little bit unbalanced. So I need to take it a little bit slowly today, and maybe also tomorrow. Maybe just go for a walk and so on, and then get back into working out again. But if I didn't have this watch here and I felt tired like I do today, for instance, I would just feel like I need to go out and do even more, because that's just my nature. When I feel a little bit of resistance, I just feel the urge to do a little bit more and more and more, and then it will just lead to more stress and poor sleep and so on and so on. And it's not really the best long-term solution. So I really like to have that extra like reminder, it's okay to take a rest today. You worked out pretty hard yesterday and so on. But it can also be a double-edged sword, because sometimes if I have had a bad sleep, for instance, and my body battery is not that high, and my ready to training today is like at 1, so it's bad. Sorry, it's my native language. But some days maybe you're in the orange zone, but you still feel like you're okay enough to go out and do a run or walk or do some workout. And it could be a little bit demotivating actually see that it is in the orange zone, because should I go out and get a run in or some workout in, or should I maybe take a little bit of rest today? In my younger days, I would just have gone through the specific workout I've set up for the day, but I also started to actually listen a little bit to my watch here. So could be good, could be bad. Sometimes it's good to, of course, push yourself a little bit more. Other times it's good to, of course, take a little bit more rest. And sometimes it can be a little bit demotivating if you are set up to, for instance, do a long run, and you see on the screen here, today is not really the best day to do so, but still you feel okay to do it. The watch isn't always right. It's just some other point of reference, kind of not something, in my opinion, you should use to be lazy at least. If I felt ready to work out today and the watch said, no, not today, you only have 1 out of 100 readiness for workout, I still think I would actually do the workout. But other than that, I had some issues with Garmin Pay. I use exclusively Garmin Pay when I, of course, pay for something outside in the stores here in my country. It's just so convenient. I have it set to like long press on the start-stop button. Of course, you have to type in your password, and that was the issue, but only had the issue on the Garmin Epix Pro Gen 2, where it constantly just asked for the password, even though I was wearing the watch. Normally, it should only ask for the password like once every 24 hours. For me personally, before I go into a store, I will usually just, of course, activate Garmin Pay, and I will type in my password. So I know that it is ready to pay when I stand up to the cash register, because it's not really that convenient to stand there and type in your password. Everybody can pretty much see your password when you type it in and so on. It's just convenient to be ready. So that's just what I got used to. Type in my password or just check if Garmin Pay is ready to use. But on my Epix Pro Gen 2, it will just ask for password constantly. I type in the password before I went into the store. I type the password before when I stand in line, before I would get to the payment terminal, and then it will still ask me for a password when I actually had to pay for the product. So that was very annoying. I did do a full reset of the watch, and it has fixed it. I have not had that issue after that, but it's still in the back of my mind always when I wear my Epix Gen 2, my Epix Pro Gen 2 rather, because it was just such an annoyance the first month I was owning this watch. And it seems like on Garmin forums that there was other people having same issues and still haven't been fixed in firmware. It's not only me having that issue, but that's maybe a little bit of a weird issue to talk about on a sports watch because, it does so many other things. But like I said, Garmin Pay is what I use as my primary payment method. And one of the reasons why I also have a smartwatch, I don't wear this all the time, but from time to time I do wear it on my right wrist just so I can get some smartwatch functionality. And this is also an LTE capable smartwatch, so I can just leave my phone at home and only really wear a watch. And that's also something I would kind of like Garmin to be able to at least answer calls. I know it's probably a lot to ask for, and maybe it will kind of ruin the whole idea with these watches, but it is just something I miss a little bit when I'm on a Garmin watch. A little bit more smarter functionality. Also maybe a Google Assistant or something like that. It's just so convenient for setting timers and controlling my lighting at home and setting the heater and so on. Just to be able to talk to Google. I do have Google speakers around my house, but it is just something different to have that on your wrist, and you can just quickly enable Google Assistant and tell it whatever you want to do. And like I said, for answering phone calls, and just be able to have a SIM card inside of your watch. So you don't really need to carry, a phone with you. It is not the same as having a phone because you can do so much more on the phone, but it is nice if you just want to go for an hour walk or something like that. You don't have to carry everything with you, and you can still reply and answer calls and maybe even also write some text and so on. So that is something I kind of want to see in a Garmin watch, but then again, something I really don't want on a Garmin watch. So it's a little bit bittersweet, but it is a little bit annoying that you cannot do it on such an expensive watch. And it would just be a killer smartwatch, the Garmin Epix Pro 2 here, because of that long battery life. You get 14 days of always on screen with your track a few activities a week. That is just killer. Maybe it wouldn't be as impressive if it also had smartwatch functionality. You probably need a little bit more or faster processors to actually process all that data and so on. So maybe you only get half of the battery life if this was actually a smartwatch. And it's not really a worthy trade-off in my opinion, because you kind of lose out on some of that unique features of a Garmin watch, which is the fact that it is a very serious piece of equipment. It is not like something maybe resemble a little bit of toy, but I think now when we see Apple Watch Ultra also get into the territory, of course, there is still a lot of differences between the Apple Watch Ultra and the Garmin watches here in terms of their functionality. But, it's kind of getting there, and I think Garmin also knows it, that they kind of need to get into the smarter watch game as well. Not just with their smaller end series or lower end watches, but also with the higher end watches. I would really like to experience what Garmin can actually do there, as long as you can just turn it off. So for all those people who don't really want smart functionality, just be a big disable function inside the settings, disable every smartwatch functionality, and that would be nice. But it does have Wi-Fi and does have Bluetooth, of course, so it should be able to maybe answer calls when you are at home. You could sync it over Wi-Fi, or maybe it's an issue because of Apple don't really want to open up for that functionality on smartwatches. You can't even reply to text on Apple watches, or Apple phones, excuse me. With a Garmin watch, you can only do that on Android, and of course only predefined answers that you have set up in Garmin Connect. So maybe that's an issue. Maybe Garmin should get into smartphone business, make their own smartphone, so you could have a phone that actually were 100% in function with the smartwatch functionality. Maybe the confusion, the GPS handheld devices with a mobile phone. I wouldn't really mind that at all. It would be interesting to see Garmin's take on a smartphone so that I could control every aspect of it. Of course, just running Android. But yeah, that's just one minor thing I would really like, a little bit more smart functionality, be able to answer calls, or maybe even have a SIM card inside. So you could take this with you, and you could really rely on getting in contact with the outside world. I don't really use my watches to play music when I go out and run, so I can't really speak to that function, but you also kind of lose a lot of battery on your watch when doing so. So that's not really a worthy trade-off for me. And again, I just resort to wearing my smartwatch here that also have LTE, so I can stream music directly from the cloud to my watch using Bluetooth headphones. That's what I have just learned to do. And then of course the flashlight on both of these, definitely wouldn't say it's a game changer. I found the flashlight on the 7X to be good enough, but these are just the amount brighter that I really only have mine set to 2 out of 4 for general purpose. My 7X, I believe I had it on 3 or 4, and these are still a little bit brighter, and I feel like they are a little more focused. Still very, very floaty light. Don't get me wrong, it's not like a very concentrated and focused beam. They are floaty, but it's definitely a more usable flashlight. I've also been out running late at night where I actually had the need to use these flashlights, or where it would actually be nice to use those flashlights so I can actually see the trail in front of me. And these definitely did a little bit better. I had the Epix Gen 2 on my wrist that day, so that definitely did better than my 7X. I did use my 7X a few occasions where I went out for a longer run, and at least 5 kilometers of that run I actually was quite dependent on the flashlight of that watch, because there was a lot of frogs on the trail that night, and it was just dark enough for me not to be able to distinguish between the frogs and the leaves. So the flashlight there was very useful, but it wasn't really bright enough on the Garmin 7X. But this time around, I feel like you can actually see what's on the trail, not just the shade of something actually on the trail. So definitely, I wouldn't say it's a reason to upgrade alone, but the backlighting of the display, if you have the 7X to the 7X Pro, and the improved flashlight was enough for me personally to upgrade. Plus also the better heart rate sensor. I do feel that it is definitely an improvement, and also the faster charging. So should you really get one of those watches, I would say you couldn't really go wrong with either one of those. It's really hard for me to tell you to get one over the other, because like I said, I have both of these, or as you can see here in the video, I have both of them. So I can't really decide, and I wouldn't really want to get rid of either one of them. If I only had to pick one between the two, and somebody was really twisting my arm, it would have to be the Epix Pro Gen 2 51mm. That would stay on my wrist, and I would have to get rid of the 7X Pro. But yeah, I really don't want to do that. I really enjoy using both of these watches. I like both of their strengths and their weaknesses. And now when we get into like the autumn/winter time here in Scandinavia, it gets very dark very fast. So in the darkest period, it gets dark at around 3 in the afternoon already. So the OLED screen would definitely be a winner in those scenarios, versus this transflective screen. It just does so much better when it's sunny out, and I really, really enjoy wearing it when there is a lot of sun, or just when you get into the spring or the early autumn. I think still it is a nice watch. So yeah, both these watches, you can't really go wrong with them. Should you upgrade from a 7X to a 7X Pro? I'm not really sure. Of course, you didn't really have an option for a 51mm AMOLED Garmin watch in the past, so this is pretty much all you have, and I think this is definitely the watch to go for this generation. But if you're coming from an older watch and you still really like that MIP type display, this is definitely a very good upgrade, just for the backlighting, faster charging, flashlight, and also the newer heart rate sensor. And if you're coming from a Fenix 6 or older, you also just take advantage of that much better GPS chip inside, just so much more accurate and faster at acquiring a signal. So that's also definitely a big upgrade, but that's of course the same with both of these. And of course, if you're interested in the watches and or the watch bands, I can share some links down in the description. But that's pretty much all I have after 4 months. Still fantastic watches. You cannot really go wrong with either one of them. So I hope to see you again in a future video, but that's been it for this one. Until then, take care.